The weather is finally warm enough. It doesn't look like there is any chance of frost. So for me, that means it's time to put tomatoes in the ground. In this video, I'm going to talk about a few different ways that I am growing my tomatoes this year, some different experiments because I can't help but experiment. So trellising in cages, and I'll show a few different ways that I've done it in the past that I'm not doing it this year. And then we'll get into how to plant tomatoes. Oh, and thankfully I have some help with me today.
Hi, I'm Amanda.
To help me stay organized and figure out exactly how I'm going to cram all these tomatoes in, I've got a sheet here where I've laid out everything that hopefully actually works in real life as it does on this piece of paper. Because I have 8 different varieties of tomato at least listed here. However, I couldn't help myself and I may have more than 8 different varieties started. So we may get creative as we start placing them and running out of space. These tomatoes right here are the San Marzano that I'm planting. It's a determinate tomato, so it's not going to get super tall, 2.5 to 3 feet. And I've got them spaced out every 2 feet, which is about the width of the cages that I have. So those should be good. And with a tomato, I don't know how you've planted them in the past, but deeper the better, because all of these little hairs that are on the side, once they have ground contact, they'll make roots. So like this branch, like this was already broken, so I may go ahead and just take that off. There we go. If you really wanted to, if I didn't already have a bajillion tomatoes, plop that in water and now you're gonna have another one. So that looks pretty good, and I might even, I mean, this sometimes like hurts people to like see this and do it, because that's gonna be buried, and really, we'll probably come back through, and once it even gets more growth, pluck these off as well, because ideally the first 8 inches, I don't want any leaves, because a lot of times when you get your diseases on your tomatoes, it's soil-borne diseases splashing up from rain or watering that hit the leaves. So if you have more space, that helps. Also, it helps to mulch as well, but I'll also be installing a drip irrigation system that will, when I'm watering and not relying on the rain, it won't have that splash. So, like that still looks really good, because sometimes you'll, especially if you get them from the big box stores, the whole thing will be wrapped around in white and they'll have roots coming out the bottom. This was about the perfect timing for this plant. All right, now fill her up and cover it back up. For those of you who saw my last video where I was in the hospital, I think it warrants a little bit of a health update. I'm clearly no longer in the hospital, and I want to give a big thanks to my wife, my dad, and my father-in-law for helping keeping the garden going while I was in the hospital. My dad helped build all of these cages right here, which are the cages that I used growing up, the same style. And if you want to see a video about those, I made one 2 years ago, and I'll link to it up above and down below. But also, Amanda is here because she's helping me out in the garden. I can now move around and do a lot of things, but I'm extremely weak. So I can't do stuff for long, and I'm just trying to pace myself because my muscles are so weak. I would hate to, as I'm trying to recover from my now autoimmune disease that attacks my motor nerves, I don't want to do something silly like fall and injure myself in another way and land myself back in the hospital. So that's my health update, and I'm very, very fortunate to have Amanda out here helping me put the garden together, because that was the first thing that I thought of when I couldn't use my hands or walk. What about my garden? So there are several different ways that you can trellis and support your tomatoes. With the San Marzanos, I'm using the short cage. And this right here is the trellis that I used last year and also my first year. This is a 30-foot long trellis made from T-post, just a T-PVC coupling. And this right here is metal EMT conduit that you would run wire through. And this worked pretty well, but had some issues. By the end of the summer heading into fall, when some of my larger slicing tomatoes were just spilling over the top, the string that I had was so weak that they would snap. And once it snaps, there's no real way of propping up a 7-foot tomato again. So I am switching away from this trellis for this year to try something a little bit different. And that would be this trellis right here, which is much shorter, but this is made of cattle panels. So again, my 30-foot row, I have 2 cattle panels supported with T-posts, and this is sitting at probably 5 feet. I'm 6 foot tall, and I will be planting them in the ground, and as they grow up, attaching them to this sturdy metal trellis. And even though I'm gonna have a lot of tomatoes in this row, they're not gonna get heavy enough to pull this thing down. Now, at the end of the season, if they do start getting really tall, I may come back in with maybe another 10-foot piece of that EMT conduit, attach it to the metal cattle panel to give me more vertical support, because most of the tomatoes, actually all the tomatoes that I'm growing along here, are what are known as an indeterminate tomato. They grow to an indeterminate length. They're just gonna keep growing until it finally frosts and they die. So they can get really, really long. I don't know if you've ever seen the type of tomatoes that they grow in a greenhouse or a hothouse, where they do the lean and lower on strings, but some of those tomatoes can get 20, 30 feet long under the right conditions. Outside in Kentucky, they won't get that big, but they'll get pretty big. Before planting out these tomatoes, I amended the soil, or rather, Amanda amended the soil with alfalfa pellets, which are typically used for feeding horses, but alfalfa is a good source of nitrogen at a slow release, and blood meal. I didn't add any additional sources of phosphorus or potassium because soil testing shows that I have plenty, so I do not need to do that. So if I was to go in with a balanced fertilizer, that would probably be too much of that nutrient and could actually negatively impact my plants. Good morning, it is the next day and all of my tomatoes are planted, well, except for one, because there's apparently a massive rock right where I wanted to plant this tomato, so I might have to do a little bit of excavating if I still want to put it in that spot. But let me show you some of the things that I am doing this year with my tomatoes. Right now I have 30 tomatoes in the ground over 3 rows. Now at the end of the rows I have some eggplants and some other things, and this is how many tomatoes I planted last year in 2 rows. So I've increased my spacing a little bit, especially for the big slicer tomatoes. For those, I did a 2-foot spacing last year. I increased that to 3-foot spacing. And one of the things that I'm gonna be doing this year is I've got this cattle panel where I'm growing tomatoes on, but also for this variety right here, which is a Big Beef Plus, I've got Big Beef Plus down here, and then his friend right here in this cage. And my thinking is I'm gonna compare the trellising of tying it up throughout the season, removing all of the suckers, maybe doing 1 or 2 liters on this tomato plant. And then for the one in the cage, I'll remove some of the lower leaves just to get those closer off the ground to prevent any kind of pressure from soil-borne diseases, but then let it go and just let it go in this cage, because growing up, that is how my dad grew tomatoes. There wasn't a whole lot of pruning. And then throughout the season, as I harvest, I'll be weighing the amount that I get from the trellised one, from the one that I've just really let go and haven't worried about too much, to see, is there really a benefit from doing all the work of removing suckers and tending to the tomato plants. If you just have a few plants, that can be okay. But even though I only have 30 feels low to me. It can be a lot of work to going in and removing those suckers. So that's something new that I'm doing. I've got my San Marzanos, which I grew for, now this is year 3, but I'm trying out a new tomato. This is the Granadero, so this is a hybrid tomato that I got from Johnny Seeds. I'm doing again in cages and on the trellis to do a little comparison there to see how they do. These ones get a lot bigger than the San Marzano, so that's why they've got the 5-foot cage rather than the 2.5-foot cage. And thinking of other things that I'm trying out. Oh, I have another trial that I have yet to start yet, but have you heard that black walnuts contain a compound called jugalone? and that compound is supposed to prevent other plants from growing. Well, I've seen some recent accounts that that concern is overblown. I'm going to test that out. So I'm going to take 2 tomato plants, put them in the ground, but for one of them, I'm going to take some black walnut wood, because I have some down black walnut, and make some stakes and spikes, even maybe do some wood chips out of it. So I'm going to have a whole bunch of black walnut that I'm going to incorporate into the soil, like worst case scenario. So having those spikes in the ground right around it to maybe replicate what a root zone would look like, mulch on top of it with that black walnut, and then do the same thing. One, just visually, because depending on what you've heard, it sounds like, you know, the plant is not going to do well. It's going to look sickly. So I'll be able to do a visual comparison between the black walnut tomato and the not black walnut tomato, and then also, again, weighing everything. Definitely drives my wife a little bit crazy to have to go out to the garden with a clipboard and have charts in our kitchen weighing stuff, but you know, it just scratches that little science itch that I have, and hopefully it yields some interesting results that I can share with you at the end of the growing season. Thank you very much for watching this video. Just walking around holding this camera is a little bit tiring for me, but I wish you guys the very best. I'm feeling, I mean, way better, but still a lot of work to do in recovering. And I really appreciate all the well wishes that I got on my one video about my health update. Yeah, making me tear up a little bit. So I love you guys. I wish you the very best, and happy gardening. See you later. Bye. All right, so camera is on. So if you want to crouch down in that row, and then of course, as I'm filming, I always try to make sure, like, not to put my backside near the camera in case a little butt crack wants to show. Because the times that I have had to edit and crop in, like, oh, we got a little crackage.